So you're sitting there stuck in traffic on the 405 and you pull open your phone, you open Zillow and realize that a shack in Los Angeles costs $1 million. And you're asking yourself the same question that you've probably been thinking about for a little bit now. Should I actually just move? Should I move to Michigan? Yeah, and I get it. This is the same question that I asked myself back in 2014. My wife and I were making $150,000 a year. We were living in California. We were paying $1,600 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment. Okay, a 1-bedroom, I know it's super common out in the LA area. And it's like, hey, that's no big deal. Prices are probably double that what they are back then today, but we felt like we were living paycheck to paycheck. So we did something that probably seemed a little bit crazy at the time. We just packed up and moved back to Michigan. And I'm gonna walk you through whether you should do the same thing. Hey, if you're new here, I'm Meldrum with True Living Group, and I help families make better decisions when making that move here to Michigan. So if you are thinking about it, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on everything we cover about living here in Michigan. Now, here's the thing that makes us a little different from all the other moving to Michigan videos that you're probably watching here on YouTube. You know, I'm not just some agent who Googled California and put together a slideshow. You know, my wife and Brianna and I actually lived out in California. We were in the Orange County area and we made some good money, you know, but we still felt broke. And so when I walk you through these pros and cons here, I'm not just guessing at it. I lived both sides of this. All right, so let's get into the biggest reason you probably clicked this video, which is money. In California, you're looking at $1 million for a fixer-upper in a decent neighborhood. In Michigan, that same money gets you a legit mansion. Okay, I'm not kidding. You know, we're talking lakefront properties, acreage, a luxury condo right downtown Detroit or Grand Rapids. But let me make this real for you with what actually happened in our situation. When we were living out in California back in 2014, that 1-bedroom apartment was $1,600 a month. You know, our household income was $150,000 a year. You know, what we actually saved? Absolutely nothing, to be honest with you. Okay, we couldn't save a thing. You know, the houses that we could actually afford, well, nothing that made sense for us at the time. So we did what everyone thought was crazy and we moved back to Michigan in 2015. And by 2016, we bought our first house here in Brighton, Michigan, and we bought it for $244,000. Now, fast forward to today, that house is sitting close to $500,000. We basically doubled our equity in our home just by living here and letting the market do its thing. And yes, I know a lot of people are gonna say, well, California has had a massive amount of appreciation in home value as well. And yes, that's also true. But for people looking to buy right now, that's not the case. Okay, you didn't get in early and let your money do what it's going to do. All right, so you got to look at these things in perspective. For people looking to buy right now that may not be making, you know, the money it costs to actually afford in California, well, you got to look at other options. Or maybe you did buy at the right time and now you're looking at life in California thinking like, wow, what could we actually get? We could buy a house in Michigan and pay it off and actually have money to go on vacations and do other things, maybe invest and, you know, buy some rental properties and start your own business. But here's the thing that really got me. When we bought our house, our mortgage was actually less than what we were paying for rent out in California, except now we're building equity instead of just handing it over to a landlord every single month. So housing wise in Michigan, you can grab a really nice family place in cities like Royal Oak, Ann Arbor, Brighton, Northville. We're talking, you know, anywhere from $400,000 to $600,000 range. And if you're coming from California with equity built up in your home, you're going to feel like, wow, I got a really nice down payment, or I might even have the option to pay cash for a house in Michigan. And when it comes to taxes, the property taxes here in Michigan on your home are going to feel a little bit higher relative to what your house is worth. You know, we don't have Prop 13 here in Michigan that you've got out in California, but overall tax burden, well, it's going to be way lower than what you're dealing with in California. And when it comes to everyday expenses, things like gas, groceries, and all the day-to-day stuff, you know, it's just cheaper in Michigan, okay? Pretty much across the board, it's going to be cheaper. So bottom line on the money piece for Michigan and California, you know, if you want to stop throwing away rent money and actually start building some wealth, or if you have wealth built up and you actually want to keep that wealth, well, Michigan's going to win this fight every day of the week. So the next thing you really need to consider is the weather. And yes, we do need to talk about it, you know, so let's go ahead and talk about the thing that you're probably worried about the most, which is the weather and winter for specifics. Now, you've got seasons out in California, and those seasons are fire season, June gloom, you know, all that. You know, here in Michigan, we've actually got 4 seasons and they don't mess around. They're pretty aggressive. When it comes to summer, this is probably my favorite. And look, honestly, it's pretty awesome. Okay, you're sitting around 80 degrees, sunny, and the sun doesn't go down until like 10 p.m. at night. You're swimming in fresh water, no salt, no sharks, okay, no jellyfish to worry about, nothing in the ocean that's going to come bite you. And, you know, I loved the summer and just the weather in California. That was the one thing I absolutely loved. But summers here in Michigan, they just hit different. And when it comes to fall here in Michigan, this is probably my second favorite season of all. Now, you've probably seen on postcards or seen pictures of like, all the red, the yellow, all the autumn colors that are like very vibrant. And yes, most of Michigan does have that. Check out northern Michigan, do the tunnel of trees, which is absolutely awesome. If you ever get a chance, go to northern Michigan, get on some lookout points and see this for yourself. It truly is one of those things that you do need to experience at least once in your life. And let's talk about my least favorite season of all of them, which is winter. Now, I don't expect anybody to really love winter. Now, there are those crazy weirdos out there that are like, I absolutely love winter. Okay, I'm not one of them. I put up with winter in Michigan because that is just really the necessary evil to experience and enjoy the rest of Michigan. And yes, winter can be fun, and you do learn to embrace it. Like, I love my core memories, with my girls and growing up in Michigan, going out and building snowmen, snowmobiling, snowboarding, getting out and doing those things and having the ability to go out and just have a snowball fight. Right? Or shove your brother or sister's face into the snow and be like, yeah, I did that. Right? But you got to learn the basics first, right? You can enjoy all that. You got to have a good coat. Okay. If you're coming from California, buy a good coat, buy gloves, get good boots, right? Be warm, buy thick wool socks, right? If your feet are always cold, like mine are, I'm always wearing wool socks. I'm not going to lie. Our first winter back was pretty rough for my wife and I. We kept looking at each other like, did we really just do this? Right? We came back in February in the core of winter. And I'll never forget when we moved back to Michigan. We made the drive from California back to Michigan. We took the northern route. So driving through the Rocky Mountains, there was a snowstorm and it was absolutely awful. You guys, there was semi trucks, this was at night. So semi trucks were just passing us left and right and just cruising by us. I mean, they're going down these big winding turns in the mountains, no guardrail. We got a Jeep Liberty and a Ford Fusion we're driving with a U-Haul trailer behind the Jeep. And I don't even know if this thing's going to stay on the road. And I'm like, we got to stop. Like, we're stopping, pulling off the road. And again, we're from Michigan. Okay. I'm used to driving in the snow, but driving through the mountains, whole new level. But in all seriousness, the seasons do give you that sense that time's actually passing. It's kind of hard to put into words until you actually live through it. But the changing of the seasons symbolize something different every single year. Coming into the holidays, you're going into Thanksgiving and Christmas. You're expecting the fall colors. You're expecting, pumpkin spice and all this. And then you expect the snow and the kids are waking up like, are we going to have a white Christmas? And the third thing to consider is the ocean life versus lake life here in Michigan. Now, if you're somebody that's really tied to like big wave surfing out in the Pacific, well, Michigan's not going to offer that at all. Like, you're going to have to get on a plane, head back to the Pacific and go big wave surfing. It's just not going to happen here in Michigan for you. But we do have something that's a little bit equivalent. All right. I might get some hate in the comments for this. It's okay. It's okay. That's what I'm here for. We do have Great Lakes. Okay, you guys, we're comparing oceans to Great Lakes, but here's the funny thing. I've been seeing this trend go around on social media, and people are visiting Michigan for the first time thinking like, oh, they're going to see some lakes, and they look on a map and like, oh, there's Lake Michigan, there's Lake Huron, Lake Superior, and then they get to the shoreline of the lake and they're like, I can't see the other side at all. Like, you guys call this a lake? And like, yeah, this is lakes. There are inland lakes and there are Great Lakes, you guys. And the Great Lakes are some of the most amazing bodies of water that we have here in Michigan. Okay. Heading over to the west side of the state, you got St. Joe, South Haven, Grand Haven, all up along the coast. That's Lake Michigan. Tons of awesome towns, tons of awesome places to go visit in the summer. And then there's northern Michigan. Okay. You got Traverse City, you got Petoskey, you got Mackinac Island. All of these places along the coast, they're going to offer you something completely different. Okay, one of our favorite things to do is go up to Traverse City every single year. We spend a couple weeks in Leland, Glen Arbor, and these are destinations. Okay, this is where the Sleeping Bear sand dunes are in northern Michigan. I got to get my geography right. But the Sleeping Bear sand dunes are in northern Michigan. And guys, those are absolutely one of the most iconic places in Michigan. If you haven't visited, definitely put that on the map and put that on the list of things to do here. Go check them out. We're still, to this day, and we've been taking our girls there, and I've been going there since I've been a kid. We've been exploring new spots, so new lookout points, new trails, and every single year, we still have not explored everything. Okay. And my aunts and, people in my family who've been going up there for years are saying the same thing. We never even knew about this place, right? There's little, places and hidden gems to find all over Michigan. And that's the beauty of it. So moving on, and the fourth thing that you really need to consider is the lifestyle and the culture. Now, when it comes to the California culture, I'm not here to bash it. Right? I grew up in the Midwest, so it was just different. And I realized like going somewhere else and having a different norms and cultures, like you got to spend some time there and just kind of get used to it. But it really didn't vibe with me. Okay. And the California culture that I was talking about, was a little bit more competitive. Now, every event that we went to, or we were meeting people out, we were in our late 20s. So we were going out, quite a bit, trying to meet some people. And every conversation really started off with, what do you do? Right. And maybe that's small talk in California. And I could be way off base here, guys. Let me know in the comments. However, I just took it as like a status symbol, like right away, like, what do you do? Where do you live? What kind of car do you drive? And that just wasn't us. Here in Michigan, things are a little bit slower. You got the Midwest nice thing going on. People actually do strike up conversations with you in the grocery store. So if you don't like to talk, okay, just put your head down and get your groceries, get in, get out, or better yet, just have Whole Foods deliver them to you. So if you're not used to that, that can be a little weird at first, especially coming from a place like LA where everybody's just ignoring everybody. You don't even have the option to talk to anybody. It's just like everybody's got their head down anyways, just minding their own business, trying to figure out like, how am I going to get to the next stage in life, right? How am I going to get to the next whatever, they're chasing. And I just wasn't about that. So when it comes to traffic in Michigan compared to California, there is no comparison in my opinion, okay? The traffic in California is absolutely nothing I've ever seen before, okay? Sitting in traffic to go 2 miles and you're sitting there for 30 minutes, like that's absolutely bonkers. Okay. The only other place that I've seen this happen is like New York. I mean, Chicago maybe, but like we don't have that here in Metro Detroit. If you're sitting in that type of traffic, there's probably a bad accident, right? There's like the highway shut down, they're diverting traffic off. If you're running into like just normal rush hour traffic, you're probably adding 15, 20 minutes to your commute. Okay. Not 90 minutes because there's so many people just getting on the highway at one time and the highway just can't take it. Okay. That absolutely drove me nuts about California, but here in Michigan, it's not that bad. But there is one thing I do miss about California, and that was the food. Okay. And I'm going to be straight with you guys. Like there's no comparison. I miss the authentic Mexican food and the Asian food that we had out in California. We had hot pot for the first time. I didn't even know what hot pot was until I moved to California. I ended up having it in China while I was there, but California really introduced me to it. And the authentic Mexican food, there was this place that we went to. It was literally a hole in the wall. And I know you guys, those are the best places to go to. But they served the best tacos, like hands down, still to this day, the best taco I've ever had. The salsa was so fresh, so authentic, and my mouth's just watering just thinking about that. I want to go back and get that taco again. But we don't have anything that compares to that in Detroit. Like I promise you, there are some good taco places, but even people from California have tacos here in Michigan. They're like, yeah, this is okay. This is like, American style tacos. Okay. And even some of the Mexicans, like we have Mexican Village in Detroit, and people from California have been there like, yeah, it will do, but not as good as our food scene in California. All right, so the fifth thing you really need to consider is the economy and the job market, because let's be serious. We're going to buy houses, we're going to have all this money to spend, we want to go on vacations, but we don't have jobs. We're not doing any of that. Okay, we got to get into the job situation because this is where people start to get a little bit nervous. So when it comes to corporate America, this is where salaries in Michigan generally start to become a little bit lower than California. And, I did take a pay cut when I moved back from California to Michigan, and that's just the reality of it. And that's because the cost of living is less expensive in Michigan compared to California. But here's the thing you got to really think through. Does that pay cut actually balance out when everything else costs way less? For us and pretty much every family that I work with making this move, the answer is yes, and it does. It might make 20, maybe 30% less, but your cost of living drops by 40 to 50%. Okay, no joke. So that's some serious savings. And by the end, you end up with more money in your pocket at the end of the month, not less. So when most people think about the job market in Michigan, you're probably thinking about the Motor City and how much the automotive industry really does make up the Metro Detroit area. Now, although this is the case, yes, the Motor City is real and the automotive industry, does play a big role here in our job market. It's not the only sector. Okay, there's a very, very big medical sector here in Michigan. And I think it's probably due to because a lot of people who are in the automotive industry and in these factory jobs do need medical attention. Okay, I don't know if there's a correlation there, but there's a huge medical sector here in Michigan. There's also a big tech hub, that's growing in Detroit, in Ann Arbor, and there's tons of engineering work. There's like one of the most high paying jobs in Michigan is engineers. So if you're remote or even better, and you want to keep your California salary and live here in Michigan, you can watch your bank account start growing. So with this remote work and people being able to work for companies, all over the place, they're not really tied down to, a state specifically. So you get to pick and choose where you want to live if your company is offering remote options. All right, so the question you need to ask yourself is, should I move to Michigan from California? Now, only you can answer that, but let me give you two scenarios, okay? Somebody who should move to Michigan from California is somebody that actually wants to own their home, start building wealth, instead of just getting by. Maybe somebody who wants a little bit slower pace of life, a little bit more family oriented. You do like the fresh water, maybe you love the ocean too, but you don't mind giving up the ocean for the winters, here in Michigan. Or maybe you're just tired of working your tail off and having nothing to show for it. Well, there's a better option, and that's Michigan. So look, like I said, Michigan is not for everybody. It gets a little gritty, it's a little cold, but it's a beautiful place. People are welcoming and it's affordable in a way that actually lets you breathe and start saving. For Brianna and I, this move made everything for us. Okay, it went from feeling broke on six-figure salary to actually building some wealth. Buying a house, starting a business. We essentially built a life that we dreamed about in California, but we just couldn't afford. Now, could we have stuck it out? Maybe, but why? Why keep grinding like that when there's a better option sitting right in front of us? So if you are seriously thinking about making a move here to Michigan, I'd love to help you. That's what we do. We help families relocate from expensive places like California and New York here to Southeast Michigan. You can call, text, email me, or better yet, go ahead and click the link in the description below. It'll schedule a Zoom call with us so we can meet face to face. And even if you're not quite ready to talk to me or somebody from my team, go ahead and keep watching these videos. This is why we make them. These are all things living here in Michigan so you guys can learn. Keep doing your homework, and when you're ready, we'll be here. Oh, and make sure you keep an eye out for our next video where I'm going to be breaking down the actual cities that families are moving to here in Southeast Michigan. Okay, and you're not going to want to miss it, I promise. Okay, good content just like this one. So go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss that video or any video that I drop on this channel, and drop me a comment below. Let me know where you're moving from, and what's your biggest worry about moving to Michigan. Okay, drop it in the comments. I read every single one of those, and it helps me make more videos just like this that answer your common questions. So thanks for watching, you guys. I'm Eric, and whether you end up moving here or not, I hope you find the financial freedom that you're looking for, because that's what really matters most.